The auction nobody watched. The market was loud, full of voices shouting prices. Cages stood in a long line, each one holding someone for sale. Strong alien fighters, pretty dancers, skilled cooks. Buyers walked up and down, placing bids, laughing and pointing. But in the farthest corner, there was one small cage that nobody looked at. Inside it sat a thin alien girl with dirty skin, bruised arms, and dull purple eyes. Her body was covered in scars, her hair rough and cut unevenly like someone had chopped it with a knife. She wore no shoes, only a torn cloth wrapped around her like an old sack. She didn't speak. She didn't cry. She didn't even look up. The seller didn't bother shouting her price. He just placed a sign on her cage. Defective slave, wounded, worthless. 1 coin or less. No one stopped. She's ugly, they said. She's probably sick. Who would want that? The crowd passed by, uninterested. Children laughed and threw stones. A trader kicked her cage, and still she didn't move. Then Marcus appeared. He was not dressed like the rich buyers. His clothes were simple, dusty boots, a brown jacket, and a scarf around his neck. He had no guards, no servants, just a small bag on his back. He walked slowly, looking at each cage. When he reached her, he stopped. He didn't say anything. He just looked at her, really looked. She finally lifted her head, expecting him to spit or mock her. But he didn't. His eyes were calm, tired maybe, but kind. The seller noticed and came closer, grinning. "That one?" he asked, laughing. "She's trash, you sure? 1 coin is more than she's worth." Marcus reached into his pocket and pulled out a single credit coin. He handed it over without a word. "Suit yourself," the seller chuckled. "No refunds if she dies on the way home." The cage door creaked open. For a moment, the girl didn't move. "Go," the seller barked. "You belong to him now." Slowly, she crawled out. Her legs were weak. She nearly fell. Marcus reached out, but didn't touch her. He simply turned and started walking. She followed, barefoot. People stared. Some laughed. "A human with a broken toy," someone whispered. But Marcus didn't care. The walk back to his home was long and silent. The girl didn't ask questions. She just followed like a shadow. The sun was low by the time they reached a small house near the forest edge. It was quiet. No noise. No other people. He opened the door and stepped aside. She looked at him, confused. She thought maybe he wanted her to stay outside, but he nodded toward the warm light inside. She walked in. There was a soft couch, a low table, and a fire burning gently. A small pot was cooking something that smelled good. Her stomach growled loud and painful. He noticed, but said nothing. He pointed to a wooden bench by the fire. She sat slowly, not knowing if it was a trick. Then he brought a bowl of soup. He placed it in front of her and stepped back. She stared at it, then at him. "Eat," he said softly. She grabbed the bowl with shaking hands and brought it to her lips. It burned her tongue, but she didn't stop. She drank it all in one go, as if afraid it might disappear. He gave her water, then a blanket, then walked to the other side of the room and sat quietly reading something. She curled into the corner, her body warm for the first time in many days. Her hands still shook, but not from cold this time. From confusion. Why wasn't he hurting her? Why did he feed her? What did he want? That night she didn't sleep. She kept waiting for him to come over and do what every other master did, but he never moved. He let her sleep on the soft rug near the fire. He didn't chain her. He didn't even lock the door. In her mind she tried to understand. Was this a trap? Was he playing a game? Why? But the next morning, the only thing he said was, "There's food on the table." And then he walked out to the field behind the house to work. She stood by the window watching him. This human was strange, quiet, kind. He didn't smile, he didn't laugh, but he also didn't hit. No one had ever looked at her the way he did at the auction. Not with disgust, not with pity, but with something else. something she didn't have a name for yet. Days passed in quiet routine. The alien girl, she still hadn't told him her name, woke up slowly each morning, her body still tense. But the warmth was real. She wasn't outside. She wasn't locked in a cage. Marcus continued his gentle care. He cooked, he shared his food, he gave her space. He never demanded anything, never raised his voice, never made her feel like property. One evening, as they sat by the fire after dinner, he looked at her and asked quietly, "Do you have a name?" She froze. A name? Nobody had ever asked that before. She'd been called thing, animal, or it for so long that she had forgotten her real name. Her lips moved, but no sound came. He noticed her fear and didn't push. "It's okay," he said gently. "You don't have to speak. Not yet." They ate in silence, but this silence wasn't cold. It wasn't angry. It felt strange. Safe. Over the following days, she watched him more closely. He worked outside during the day, fixing things, tending to his small garden. At night, he made food for them both. When he saw her shivering one evening, he placed clean clothes, a shirt and pants, folded on her blanket. They were too big for her, but they were soft. She wore them carefully and held on to them like treasure. She still didn't speak, but she started helping. She swept the floor, folded blankets, watched him work. When he saw her efforts, he simply said, "Thank you." That made her chest feel strange, tight. No one had ever thanked her. One night, as he walked past her blanket by the fire, she whispered, softly, the first word she had spoken in years, "Thank you." He paused, turned and smiled gently. "You're welcome." Later that week, as she helped him repair a broken music box, she finally whispered, "Lyra. My name is Lyra." Marcus looked up from the tiny gears he was fixing. "Lyra," he repeated, as if testing the sound. "That's a beautiful name." She felt something warm bloom in her chest. Her name, spoken with kindness instead of cruelty. The music box had been broken when Marcus found it in some ruins. The little metal dancer inside had chipped wings and faded. Paint. But Lyra thought it was the most beautiful thing she'd ever seen. "It reminds me of myself," she said quietly as Marcus worked on the delicate mechanisms. Broken, but still trying to move. He looked at her with those kind eyes. "You're not broken, Lyra. You're healing." When he finally got it working, the soft melody filled the room. The dancer turned slowly, gracefully, her chipped wings catching the firelight. Lyra watched in wonder, and then something amazing happened. She laughed. It was small, light, like the rustle of leaves. It slipped out before she could stop it. Her hands flew to her mouth in shock. She hadn't laughed in years. Marcus looked up, and his smile was wider than she'd ever seen it. "She's dancing," Lyra said, eyes bright with joy. "Even though she's broken, she's still dancing." "Just like you," Marcus said softly. Months passed. Lyra grew stronger, both in body and spirit. She spoke more, smiled more, helped with the household tasks, not because she had to, but because she wanted to. She felt safe with Marcus, protected and cared for. But the outside world hadn't forgotten about escaped slaves. One stormy night, Marcus packed a travel bag and placed it on the table. Lyra's heart sank as she watched him fill it with supplies. "You heard them outside yesterday, didn't you?" he asked gently. She nodded. The slave hunters had passed through the woods, their harsh voices carrying on the wind. "It's not safe for you here anymore," Marcus continued. "I've made a path to the next town. There's a woman there named Ida who will help you." Lyra stared at the bag, then at Marcus. "You're staying?" "They won't bother with me. I'm not what they want." "You could be hurt." He smiled sadly. "I've survived worse." Lyra felt something break inside her, not from pain, but from the terrible thought of leaving this place, this man who had given her everything. "You don't want me to stay?" she asked. That's not what this is about, he said. If they find you here, they'll take you again, or worse, and I couldn't stand that. She crossed the room and stopped in front of him. You bought me for 1 coin, but you never treated me like a slave. You gave me food, let me rest, made me laugh. No one has ever done that. She placed her hand on his chest, over his heart. This is the only place I've ever felt alive. Even if I die tomorrow, I don't want to run anymore. You don't understand what staying means, he said. It's not safe. You'll always be looking over your shoulder. Freedom means nothing if I lose the one place I belong, Lyra said, her voice steady now. I choose this. I choose to stay. The storm passed, and with it, Lyra's last doubts about her choice. She had stayed, and Marcus had accepted her decision. They were partners now, not master and slave, but 2 souls who had found something rare. As weeks turned to months, their bond deepened. Lyra learned to trust touch again. First Marcus's gentle hand on her shoulder, then his arms around her when nightmares came. She learned that not all contact was meant to hurt, that some touches were meant to heal. One evening, as they sat by the fire, Lyra looked at Marcus and said, I want to share your bed. Not as a slave's offering, but as a woman's choice. Not for warmth or safety, but because I want to belong beside you. Marcus looked at her with those same kind eyes that had seen her worth when no one else could. I won't ask anything from you, he said gently. You know that. I do, she replied. That's why I want to give everything. That night, Lyra climbed into his bed with trembling hands and a calm heart. Marcus pulled the blanket over both of them. They lay side by side, and she pressed her forehead to his chest. His arms held her not like property, but like something precious. She had once been tossed in a cage, sold for a coin, called ugly and worthless. But now she was held like a gift, like a miracle. You saw me when no one else did, she whispered, in the darkness. You gave me back my name. Now let me be yours forever. Outside, the wind moved gently through the trees. The stars blinked to life as if they too had been waiting for this moment. And in the heart of a quiet cabin, once a prison of silence, now a home of love, Lyra and Marcus finally found what neither had ever dared to hope for: belonging. Years later, visitors to the small house by the forest would hear laughter coming from within, Lyra's bright voice mixing with Marcus's deeper tones. They would see a woman with silver-streaked hair tending a garden, her scars faded but never forgotten, her eyes bright with life and love. The music box still sat on the mantel, its dancer still turning to the soft melody, and sometimes on quiet evenings, Lyra would wind it up and watch the little figure spin, remembering the day she learned that broken things could still be beautiful, that healing was possible, and that love could bloom even in the darkest places. She had been bought for 1 coin, but she had found something priceless: a home, a heart, and the knowledge that she was worthy of both.